What's up, ego hackers? Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Cutting Edge Podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph, for April. So, this particular episode is in response to a question, actually, from one of our members. And that would be a post that was put up on August 20th, 2021. It happens to be in the C.S. Joseph public group on Facebook. And it's a very relevant question because a lot of people are just not very aware of the dynamics when it comes to pessimistic or optimistic functions and how they interact together when it comes to the context of relationships. And I mean, like, and not just sexual relationships, but like even friendships, etc. So I'm actually going to read the question directly to you folks, and then I'm going to use this episode to expand upon the question, kind of, fill it out a little bit, and then answer it, basically. That's the entire point of that. But I think that this is a discussion absolutely worth having, especially since a lot of people don't realize how, a lot of people, you end up reading books like The Game, or you could read the book The Rational Male 5, which just came out. In fact, my copy is arriving in my post office box this week, so I can continue to get educated on all things red pill. Most people think I'm a red pillar, but I'm really not. I'm not even. It's more of like, it's just an aspect within the general praxeology of understanding behavioral psychology when it comes to relationships defined by the male sex and the female sex, essentially. So, that all being said, it's. I think it's really important that we kind of understand how these interact, because one of the main themes of this particular episode is it's like, okay, well, how do I actually initiate with XYZ type as XYZ type? A lot of people really struggle with initiation, men and women, and usually women often don't have to initiate in our Western society where men are conditioned to be initiators. The problem is that men are in general no longer initiating with women when it comes to seeking out sexual relationships because it's just too risky. I mean, all she has to do is scream out, "Oh, it's a creep," and then he gets thrown out of that store, or he gets thrown out of the club, or so men, quite frankly, are deciding to not initiate with women at all, and then just see which women initiate with them. And it's kind of interesting because this actually happened to me a couple of days ago, or I think it was like Sunday. I was supposed to be filming a hypocrisy of INFPs again, because I had to film it a couple of times to get it right. And my children called me, and I was hanging out with my children. And then when I was done talking to my children, and I was basically standing on a street corner, and I pulled out my cigar and I started having a smoke to get ready for the lecture that I was about to deliver. And these two girls came up to me, this ENTJ, who's a friend with an ISTP. So they have like highest professional compatibility, highest emotional compatibility, basically. And the ENTJ just comes right up to me and is like, "Hey, do you want to fuck my friend?" And then she turns over to her ISTP friend, and she's like, "Hey, do you want to fuck him?" Basically. And it was just so bizarre. It was really bizarre in that particular situation. And little did I know that the ISTP was also high on shrooms at that moment. And they're like both looking at me at that moment. And my response was, "Yeah, I'm not that cool," was basically my response to them at that moment. But yeah, it was pretty uncomfortable. Not, and yeah, it's definitely like flattering, but it's also kind of like, well, hold on, like, am I being set up here? Is this a situation where I'm going to find myself? Is this a situation where all of a sudden someone's claiming I raped them? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's all very risky when you're a man in those situations. So basically, men end up getting the short end of the stick no matter what, and it continues to be a problem overall, a definite problem. And it's it's a big it's an issue. Like, oftentimes, it's like, okay, well, are we actually safe as men to initiate with women in society? Is it actually safe for women to initiate with men? I mean, the waters have been so muddied right now that that's not really the case. And actually, if you think about it from the perspective of The Rational Male and Tomasi's books, you kind of realize that it's getting to a point, because he always has like this dark prophecy of some kind towards the end of his books, and there's 4 books out now. But in The Rational 4, which was released last year, I believe, maybe 2020, no, it's actually last year, there's a problem, and that problem is like, hey, women have this thing now where they can legally claim a man if she didn't have enthusiastic sex with him, and there's like actually a couple of court cases that backs that claim up. It's pretty scary. Just like it was really scary in the first Rational Male, where he's talking about how open hypergamy would become the norm. That was also really scary. And then all of a sudden and then that would escalate even more to like the next level. And now it's escalated to like any woman can claim rape, and almost under any situation or circumstance, even if she actually consents to sexual activity, she could still claim rape, even under consent right now in certain jurisdictions within the United States of America and within Western society, which is absolutely ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous that is the case. So men are continued to be demonized and end up having this existential crisis in terms of being masculine in that situation, because they could be thrown into jail, or they could become a registered sex offender, even though they didn't actually do anything wrong, right? That's this double standard society that we live in. And that really inhibits men from being able to initiate with women, or even accept initiation from women on a regular basis. Like, for example, I have a lot of people like online that initiate with me. Sometimes they send me photos of themselves. Sometimes they're just kind of crazy. Other times it's just for dark purposes, like they're trying to like trap me or catch me into saying something so that they can screenshot and then laugh about it on a Discord server with their friends. Who knows? But that happens all the time. But it's entirely annoying and basically the norm. I guess it comes with the territory of being a public figure. I think that it's. But here's the thing: like, if any man is like going to seek out to become a high value man, right? If that's like actually going to be a thing, they're at risk of becoming a public figure, much less a celebrity anyway. Especially a public figure within their locale, right? Not necessarily on social media. So then there's always that risk of being trapped, right? And it's a problem. It's a very large issue over time. So because of this, there's mounting social pressure on men when it comes to them initiating versus women initiating with them. There's that constant mounting pressure. But then let's look at the women's side. Like, women don't want to be seen as hoes when they are initiating with men, for example, because after a while, especially the masculine women out there, masculine women being ENTJ, INTJ, ESTP, ISTP, especially the masculine women are like, well, if I don't initiate, I'm not going to get any at all. I ain't going to get any man at all, especially because oftentimes masculine women are pretty... let's just say they could be pretty intimidating. They could be, really intimidating, and that can be a problem on a regular basis, especially. Well, I mean, ESTP and ENTJ women, they could be really, really intimidating. Although, like, for some reason, ENTJ women oftentimes come off like super rapey to me, and kind of very pushy and very forceful. That's not to say that, an ESTP is not also very pushy, but I've never really gotten the whole rapey vibe from an ESTP woman, but I have from an ENTJ woman consistently. And that's also, like, kind of a major issue, like, because they know they're masculine, they know they're intimidating, they know that they can be emasculating, or at least they've gotten that feedback throughout their life from men. And the thing is, though, is that they're like caught between a rock and a hard place. Okay, do I initiate and take that risk or not? And it's usually the masculine women that end up just kind of giving up on keeping their body count low, that they actually can attempt to receive some semblance of happiness. This is not me saying it's okay for women to, like, increase their body count or to at least give up on that, because it is still not okay in the eyes of men, and they are dooming themselves to having lower quality men throughout their lifetime as a result. But again, it's between the rock and a hard place. They really don't have, in some cases, they really don't have much of a choice. Especially if they live in a rural area, it gets even more difficult, because choices for men are just not really there. There isn't very many choices, right? But then again, like, it's really just pick your poison. No one is able to win, And then you look at the feminine women who are really feminine. They're constantly shamed into, like, you're not allowed to initiate at all, but then again, they don't necessarily have to. But the men that do initiate with them oftentimes are actually very low quality, and they end up having this abundance problem where they have too many low quality men after them, but they don't have enough life experience to actually help them choose a proper man in a situation. And this is one of the reasons why, like, for example, Elliot, he was talking about how oftentimes parents throughout history got involved when choosing a husband for their daughter, and this is one of the reasons why it became a major issue over time. So these are a lot of challenges. These are a ton of challenges that we have to combat here within postmodern Western society. I mean, we're literally on the verge of war, for example. Masculinity is an all-time low. Femininity is at an all-time low. It's been replaced with feminism, which is different, and masculinity has also been replaced with feminism. In fact, I had someone earlier today tell me about how an INTJ woman tell me about how toxic masculinity is like the worst thing in the world, and it's this and it's that, and I'm thinking to myself, lady, you have no clue what you're talking about, but whatever. I mean, I'm sure it won't be very long till you tell me I'm toxic with my masculinity, even though, like, you break all the rules that you've set up for other men in your life, but you break them for me, and then you enforce them for them. And it's kind of interesting to see you, like, not actually be consistent as a person, as you constantly, like, are going in this direction. So I'm not even entirely sure I want to be friends with that person. We'll see. But, like, it's a really weird situation, when you find yourself in the presence of wayfarers who are constantly being inconsistent with their own behavior, and they're not even aware of how inconsistent they are, and it just baffles me, entirely baffles me. So anyway, but this just is a nice little foundation to identify some of the problems that both of the sexes have to deal with when it comes to initiating with others or being initiated with. The point is that nobody wins, no one has it good at all, nobody. And society itself is going to have to change dramatically in order for somebody to have it good. I personally maintain that war is going to be absolutely necessary, because war will all of a sudden reset the beta side of a woman's hypergamous sexual strategy in order for them to all of a sudden be motivated to get with more beta male oriented men, because during wartime men are dropping like flies consistently. But then again, given how we've had peacetime under the Bretton Woods Agreement for a very long time and haven't had a world war in a very long time, the idea of having World War III such that where men are like, oh, you want me to die for this society that doesn't actually care about me? So, because here's the thing, like, if you're a woman and you're watching this, you really need to ask yourself the question, like, what do men actually get out of dying for society? Because the things that men want, men aren't even allowed to have already. So why would men be motivated to fight for the United States of America? Why would they be motivated to fight for any aspect of Western society? Oh, that's right, they wouldn't be. So already, because of that issue, it will end up, World War III will end up becoming a fight for survival in the eyes, or for Western society, because men are not even allowed to be masculine. So oftentimes, which basically means that we're already set up for failure. We're already set up culturally to lose. This is one of the reasons why China recently banned a whole bunch of content, like, for example, something like The Simpsons or Family Guy. Like, they don't want feminism to be this influence. They don't want feminism to be this influence when it comes to the men in their country. They don't like the whole Homer Simpson meme or the Peter Griffin meme, the weak male presence at home. They want masculinity as much as possible, because they realize by having that masculinity, it increases their ability to win wars. And that was like an actual direct quote in something that was said. And then you could also look at it this way, like from a TikTok point of view. So China owns TikTok, and in China, things that go viral are people with talent or brilliance, very intelligent people that are very masculine, people that are very feminine. That's what goes viral in China. But what goes viral in the United States of America are funny faces, stupid little dances, lip syncing, things that are absolutely worthless. And they're doing this as a type of a psyop in order to reduce the American male's ability to fight in a war. And if you don't think that this is happening, I'm sorry to say, you are ignorant. And you might want to kind of figure that out, okay? Because the reality of the situation is men are already being set up for failure within this country. And the whole idea that, like, they're supposed to die for you, they're supposed to fight for you, they're supposed to fight for this country, you actually think that they're going to be motivated to do that? No, they're not. They're more likely, statistically, to surrender in World War III when the Russians and the Chinese attack the continental United States. And if you don't think that's our future, you might want to wake up. Okay, so that's the situation. So, like, and it's funny, there's like this meme going around right now on Instagram about how, all of a sudden people are starting to talk about war, the risk of war. And then it shows like how people are like this dude holding a newspaper talking about war, and then all of a sudden the next photo in the bottom of the meme, it shows women on their knees cleaning all of a sudden because they don't want to fight war. It's so interesting, like how there's this massive cultural shift whenever there's the risk of war. Then all of a sudden women snap to and are no longer engaging in feminism, but they're actually engaging in their own femininity. You see what I'm saying? This too is a major risk. So those are the overall cultural impacts of what is going on, and that will obviously blow up in everyone's face. I'm telling you, Western society is on its way to a very dark future right now, because masculinity is not allowed in Western society, because masculinity would challenge the system. Whereas China and Russia, they are trying to promote masculinity as much as possible because they want to win the war. I mean, even the Chinese regular army teaches all of their soldiers that if they do win a war in America, each soldier gets to take on an American woman of his choice. That is literally actually their training. Look it up. And if you don't think that's a thing, enjoy your feminist ignorance. Yeah, because here's the thing. And if you think, the local boy's going to die for you, you're out of your mind. Okay? It's not like it's safe for him to initiate with a woman. It's not like it's safe for you to initiate with him either. Men are not getting what men like out of society. Men will not fight for this society. This society will fall. And if you want to go from a biblical example, Revelation chapter 17, the fall of Babylon. Babylon is the Statue of Liberty. It is Lady Liberty, the woman that rides on the back of the beast being Europe, okay? So you might want to pay attention to that. It's a pretty scary possibility, scary potential. But regardless of any biblical example, because that's just super metaphysical, you have to understand that, because of fatherlessness, because of the lack of masculinity in Western society, what happened to the Germans by the Russians at the end of World War II, where the Russians came in and absolutely destroyed Germany and all the women and killed the children, I promise you, is your future here in the United States of America. It is your future in Western society. It is your future. What the Russians did to the Germans, they will do to Americans. And it's not like, and we all think, because of all of our little soy boys that we have within our society that, if we'll just surrender, they're going to show us mercy, right? No, they're going to kill you, and they're going to enslave your children and your woman, if you even have one. Oh, but you technically actually don't, because men statistically don't actually have women. Only 10 to 20% of men in society actually do have women. So as a result of that, only that small percentage of men would be motivated to fight in a war. And by the way, that small percentage of men are making most money at that point in time that they would end up fleeing the country before the war even started. The reality of the situation is if the war started tomorrow, we would lose instantly. I don't care how much faith you have in nuclear weapons. I guarantee you those nukes would never fly. Never fly. Never. There's no way the elite would put their precious ecology of the earth at risk. Not going to happen. Okay? It's not going to happen. And, if you think that there's no, reason why all these major names and dignitaries in the United States government and why they have all the Chinese wives, and what percentage of those Chinese significant others are actually covert operatives? There's actually a story about that is documented fact in the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. You might want to pay attention to that. I think it's also in the 48 Laws of Power. That's a very scary social engineering story. Wow. Okay? You might want to pay attention to that Chinese story. Oh, and by the way, the American that was involved in that story, he went to jail, even though he was actually a victim. Okay? They still tried him with treason. Okay? So, anyway, the world is falling apart in so many different ways. And the only reason why Western society would even remotely have a chance at winning World War III is to bring back masculinity. We had masculinity during World War I. We had masculinity during World War II. But we don't have it now. But the enemy will have it. Russia and China will have masculinity on their side. Okay? I mean, let's be honest, Russian men are some of the most masculine men out there culturally. Their culture is superior due to it being more masculine than a United States culture, okay? So who's going to win the war? It's very simple logic, folks. You might want to pay attention, okay? So, anyway, based on that, let's actually now get to the question, because this... having this little foundation built for y'all, now we can actually get into the actual questions. So this is asked by Mr. Chad Mertz, August 20, 2021. Quote, responding SE users versus initiating SI users. I'm noticing a pattern of these types having difficulty to initially connect, but most of these pairings end up being highly compatible. once they get acquainted, INTJ with ENFP, ENTP, ESFJ, for example, I'm picturing Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth's dynamic. It's like the initiator is waiting to receive an experience, and the experience giver is waiting to respond. I'd like to hear others' thoughts on this. How did you get past this? Is this even a thing? Does CSJ cover this? Well, I'm going to cover it now. I'm also going to expand Chad's question here a little bit more. So, really what's going on is that you have SE optimistic and you have NI optimistic. You also have NE optimistic and you have SI optimistic. Now, when I'm stating that there's these 4 different optimistic functions, naturally you can assume that there are also the 4 different pessimistic functions at the same time. But let's just talk about the sexual functions, which are perception functions. That's where sexuality exists. So we're only going to be talking about SE-NI axis when compared to NE-SI axis, okay? And both these axes is that if one function is optimistic, the other function is pessimistic. For example, extroverted sensing child is optimistic, but NI parent is pessimistic. Or NI hero is optimistic, but extroverted sensing inferior is pessimistic. Let's just for a moment completely ignore who is responding or who is initiating from an interaction style point of view. Let's completely ignore interaction styles and actually just look at cognitive functions alone. Okay? Just cognitive functions. Let's just look at cognitive functions. Why not? So, cognitive functions. There's something I've noticed about extroverted sensing child and extroverted sensing hero. Okay, extroverted sensing child and hero, what are they? They're both optimistic. Okay? They basically behave the same. They're optimistic. What's the problem with extroverted sensing optimistic? Oh, that's right. Introverted intuition is pessimistic by default. The problem there is that introverted intuition is pessimistic, but why? Why is that a problem? Why is introverted intuition being pessimistic a problem? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But the main reason is that NI-pessimistics are not actually going to really initiate. They're really not. They're really not. Because, for example, if I was to go up to an ESTP woman or an ENTJ woman, or an ESFP woman, or an ENFJ woman. Those 4 types of women that I am somewhat compatible with, sexually speaking. They're SE optimistic. If I was to go initiate with them, it doesn't matter if they're attracted to me. It doesn't matter at all. Instantly, walls go up, auto rejection by default. Auto rejection. It doesn't matter. Why? Because those NI-pessimistics automatically assume their choice is being taken away. The NI parent and the NI inferior automatically take it that way by default. And because they automatically respond, it's just an instant knee-jerk whiplash reaction. They knee-jerk with, oh, my freedom is being taken away because this person initiated with me. This wasn't my choice. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for this. Oh my God. It's so annoying. They're like, oh, I didn't ask for this. Right? And then I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then, but it's an auto rejection. It's an auto rejection. Thing is, it's the same for the men. It's actually the same. They auto reject women that will come up to them. Doesn't matter how attractive they are to them. They will auto-reject because it's like, oh, my choice is being taken away. And their SE will just automatically react with their SE reaction force, especially if it's an SE hero. They're really going to overreact. And it's a problem. Yeah, exactly. If they show, just question it. Just the auto response is rejection. The SE function, the SE optimistic function will automatically reject because their NI pessimists, which are in axis with their SE optimists, will be like, oh, my choice is being taken away. Oh, it's so disgusting and it's so annoying and I hate it. It's so annoying. So this is why technically I would say you're more compatible wherever your SI function is or your NI function is. You are more compatible with the other sides. So like I have SI pessimistic, so I would be more compatible with an NI optimistic, basically, by default. Which means the extroverted sensing that would be supporting my introverted sensing would have no choice but to be pessimistic. So while I would be attempting to initiate with SE optimistic women, which would be ESTP, ESFP, ENFJ, ENTJ, if I attempt to initiate with them and they're not the ones initiating with me, I'm auto-rejected. But if I initiate with an ISFP, an ISTP, an INTJ, or an INFJ, I'm not going to be rejected. It's not going to be a default. It's not. Because their extroverted sensing is pessimistic, it's not going to react as quickly, and their NI may have some desire already pre-stoked as a result. Well, let's look at it this way. Let's go back to the SE optimistic types. SE optimistic types, they're all about having time served. They need time to observe you before their NI decides that they may actually be interested in you. So, for example, I literally actually had my wife explain this to me a while ago, and she says, "Oh yeah, if I'm working somewhere and someone asks me out, like at my job, I'll tell them hell no because they're taking away my choice. But if a man comes in and doesn't ask me out at all, but then he comes in every day at the same time and is just giving me more attention than other people consistently, and he's being consistent with giving me attention, I see that he's putting in the time. It's all about time served at that moment. And I notice that he's sticking around. Wait a minute. He's sticking around, she says. Interesting. So that means SE optimistics, SE hero, and SE child need people to stick around first so that their SE optimism can observe those people before their NI pessimism actually decides that they're actually interested in the person. Which means time served, time spent. Why is it ISTJs, who are the golden pair of ESTPs, so obsessed with service and time served? Oh, that's right, because their golden pair expects time served before they're even open to having a sexual interlude. Oh, okay. That makes sense. God, it's annoying. I hate it. Especially being heart temple, movement type, and a starter type. Yeah. I hate it. I hate it. This is why, I usually, do not pay any attention to SE optimistic women, and I force them to have to come to me when they're initiating with me. I will not speak to them otherwise. I will not waste my time, because I'm not interested in throwing pearls before swine when I'm just auto-rejected. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That's just natural to who they are, and I'm not judging them for that behavior. This is just me expressing my own SI inferior frustration. That's all it is. As the Red Pillage would say, oh, Mr. C.S. Joseph, you're just an average frustrated chump. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I can admit to being an AFC. Don't worry about it. But I'm an AFC around SE optimistic women because it's like, why bother? They're just going to auto-reject me anyway. And here's the other thing. I'm not willing with my NI nemesis, and I am not comfortable with my SI inferior to just stick around and do some time served for those SE childs and those SE heroes. I'm not doing it. I'm really not doing it at all. And they want me to put effort in them? Nope. I ain't putting effort in those women. Nope. Not doing it. But, good thing SI child exists. Good thing SI hero exists, because those men are willing to put in the effort. Good on them. That's them. But that's not me. That's not me at all. I'm not going to wait around. If a woman doesn't have her shit together ahead of time, probably not going to be interested. Then again, she could work hard and then get her shit together, then maybe all of a sudden I would be interested. I likely would. But the reality of the situation is that, like, I'm not going to be jumping through hoops for SE hero or SE child, because guess what? My introverted sensing function is pessimistic. So SI parent and SI inferior is not interested in jumping in hoops for potential relationships. And this includes acquaintances, friendships, sexual relationships. It doesn't matter, folks. This relationship dynamic is all over the place. It really doesn't matter, okay? But the reality situation is SI pessimistic is not going to jump through hoops for anybody. From its perspective, NE optimistic, which is any child and any hero, people will be jumping through hoops for us. That's how we are. So in the same way that extroverted sensing hero and extroverted sensing child expects everyone else to jump through hoops for them, which is basically time served or attention served or consistent attention or sticking around over time, extrovert intuition hero and extrovert intuition child expects similar treatment, except it's desire. It's consistent desire. It's consistent want. It's consistent making decisions for me, making decisions for my benefit, making decisions with me under consideration, okay? It's literally their decisions, their choices geared towards me and my benefit, with me being factored in, okay? That is extrovert intuition hero, that is extrovert intuition child, extrovert intuition optimistic expects that. And the women in my life absolutely have to be willing to jump through those hoops. If they're not, then my SI inferior is just not comfortable and probably going to be like, okay, goodbye, into the dumpster you go, because if you're not willing to jump through hoops for me, other women are willing to jump through hoops for me. So why am I going to be wasting my time, wasting my effort when someone expects me to jump through hoops for them? Because that's just not going to happen. It's really not going to happen. So this ends up creating an entire, dichotomy when it comes to figuring out who should be initiating with who and when they should be initiating with when. Okay, so I'd like to ask the people who are watching the stream right now, do you guys understand the difference between the pessimistic and the optimistic functions, and when it comes to people jumping through hoops for other people? Because whatever perception function is extroverted and is optimistic, the pessimistic introverted functions will force people to jump through hoops for them. It's just great when I know that NI child and NI hero are usually 80% of the time willing to jump through those hoops for me, because like all of a sudden for the first time in their life they have unlimited freedom or even more choices and more options than they had before, and I'm not super controlling as a man, and these women are like, oh dang, that's something new, and it's because I just do whatever you want, as long as you're not making me uncomfortable, which there's not very much out there that does make me uncomfortable, then what's the problem? That's right, there isn't a problem. So great, we can have a relationship, or great, we can be friends, and it's really not just with women either. It goes the same, for same-sex friendships or being acquaintances or coworkers. This applies all the way across the board. This has nothing to do with sexuality by itself. I'm only hammering sexuality within the context of this particular lecture or this episode, because it's very relatable. And that's the only reason, So yeah, there's always going to be somebody within the context of any kind of relationship that's going to expect the other person to jump through the hoops. And guess what? That other person may be very interested in jumping through the hoops. So it ends up working out anyway. The SI hero is always willing to put in the extra work for the SE hero. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just how humans are made. It's not a bad thing. The thing is, though, is that when you try to mix, for example, my SI inferior with an SE child or my SI inferior with an SE hero, bad things will happen. So, because here's the thing, you have to think about it. Here's what it ends up being the result is that, you have to understand that if you're in a mismatch with functions in terms of pessimism and optimism, automatically, by default, okay, automatically, by default, this proves that you were not that person's first choice. They're settling for you, okay? That's real, folks. They are settling for you, okay? Do you know why? Because whether or not you're aware of it or not, you had to jump through the hoops. Because, like, for example, you would have been around, like, if you were me, okay, because I'm being selfish as an ENTP right now, a little depraved with my SI inferior right now, I'll admit it. If you were me and you're around an ENTJ woman or an ESFJ or an ENFJ woman, ENTJ woman, ESTP, or ESFP woman, there's no way that I could have initiated with them in any capacity when I wanted to. So they wouldn't have been my first choice, or at least I know for a fact I wouldn't have been their first choice at that initial interaction. But later, after they've spent time around me and observed me, all of a sudden they have interest, and then they decide, okay, yeah, I actually want him, and then they initiate at that moment, right? But like, one of us, we weren't their first choice. I wasn't her first choice right at the beginning, and she's not my first choice at the end. You see what I'm saying, folks? This ends up becoming a problem over time, right? A definite problem. So no, Jay, please, no. Don't think about this in terms of interaction styles, okay? When I'm talking about initiating, I'm saying going up to somebody to initiate some kind of relationship, be it a friendship or a sexual relationship, whatever, or an acquaintance or a working relationship. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about initiating versus responding in the context of a type grid right now. I'm not talking about that. So, yeah, I understand that they all have SE, NE, optimistic. So yeah, you could argue technically that extroverts are expecting other people to jump through hoops for them. Sure, you could argue that, but the reality of the situation is that you have to understand, like, you have to really zoom out of that and look at the actual context of the interaction itself. What is the context? Okay? So, the context being, if I'm in a situation, I'm around those 4 different types of women with SE optimistic, and I actually wanted one of them at the beginning, and I went up to her and initiated, she would auto-reject me, and because I was rejected at one point in time, there would have been no chance between her at all. And she was my first choice at that moment, but I was not her first choice at that moment. So that's one context issue. Or you look at one of the other girls that was there, and then she starts observing me over time, but she wasn't my first choice. But then all of a sudden she decides that, you know, that she likes me and that she wants me, and then she initiates with me, but she wasn't my first choice. And I just became her choice later. You see what I'm saying, folks? That's a problem, okay? So this mismatching, you don't want a mismatch there. Because really, if you're going to mix an SE optimistic with an SI pessimistic, or if you're going to mix an NE optimistic with an NI pessimistic, and vice versa, you're going to end up creating a situation where one of the people in the relationship is literally settling. That's my point. Okay, do you guys get what I'm going with this? They're literally settling. They're settling for each other. Okay, somebody is. One of them is settling. Guaranteed. Because of this dynamic. Because it doesn't just happen on once at the outset. It also happens on the back end. So it technically happens twice. Where one person, it wasn't first choice, and then the other person wasn't their first choice. It doesn't matter how you bake the bread. The outcome is still the same. Okay? So that's what happens. That's what happens in respect-based relationships. Okay? So if you notice, you have affection relationship, companion relationship. So affection is golden pair, companion is pedagogue. The natural is your bronze pair, and the intrigue relationship is your is like same sexual level as your bronze pair, but different decision making functions. Those top 4 relationship, in terms of sexual relationships, those top 4 relationships, all of them have the pessimism and the optimism of the functions matching all the way across for the perception functions. They all match. They completely match. Okay? It's when you get into the bottom 4 relationships, which is the respect relationship, the kindred relationship, etc. Those kinds of relationships are, well, someone had to settle. That's the truth. That's the truth. Okay? So, that is a general overview of the problem and the results of the problem. Obviously, how to solve the problem is stick with your top 4. Stick with the affection, the companion, the natural, and the intrigue. Stick with those 4, and you won't have that problem. And there is a much higher chance, a 4 out of 5 chance, that both people involved are not settling for the other person, be it a sexual relationship, a friendship, acquaintance, or working relationship, etc. Doesn't matter. So that's how that works. That's where it comes from. That's the point. So that's why all of this is happening. But what it still doesn't do is solve the actual problem of initiating. It doesn't solve a problem. So you have to answer then 2 questions. Like if you're a man, for example, and you need to initiate with a woman, already you have to weigh the risks of initiating with her, because you could be labeled a creep, you could get thrown out of the venue, you know, who knows? Even if you did nothing wrong, you could have like bouncers all over your ass throwing you out and being physically violent with you, even though you did nothing wrong and you're just a victim of, this cultural bias towards women. Like, you already have to weigh that out. That's one thing. The next thing you have to figure out is like, okay, what is her type? Is this woman actually in my top 4? Is she an affection, companion, intrigue, or natural relationship? Does her pessimistic functions match my optimistic functions, right? So that's the next question on the list. Is she in the top 4 and not the bottom 4? If she's in the bottom 4, you need to stop initiating. Just stop initiating. This goes for men and women. Don't initiate for a relationship. Do not initiate with the bottom 4. It is up to the bottom 4 to initiate with you, regardless of your type. It is up to them to initiate with you. You don't initiate with them. You can initiate safely with your top 4. You cannot initiate safely with the bottom 4. And you also have to be willing to accept the risk that maybe she's settling for you, or maybe you're settling for her, or maybe you're settling for him, or maybe he's settling for you on the bottom 4. You might want to consider that. Okay, that's also another consideration. But let's say in a perfect world, you didn't have to concern yourself about your reputation or your personal safety with initiating with a woman. She is definitely in the top 4. She's definitely in the top 4 relationships and very initiatable, and it's safe to initiate because you know that she's not going to be settling and you're not going to be settling. There's like an actual real chance for some real attraction, and there could actually be a real chance for something real here. Okay, great. So once you get all through those hoops mentally, it's like, okay, it's time to initiate. Well, here's the thing. If she's an SI user, or if she is an NI user, you have to initiate in 2 different ways at that point, okay? Now, obviously, how you initiate with these 2 different ways does not necessarily apply to the bottom 4 compatible relationships. The kindred, the respect-based relationship. I, for some reason, forget the names of the other 2 because I'm exhausted. But they're there. It's basically, in my case, that would be ENTJ. Oh, yeah, superego is one of them, So it'd basically be superego, silver pair, and then the other ones, basically, which would be ESTP and ENFJ. Benefactor. Yeah, benefactor relationship. So but I forget the new terminology that we have for those other two. Kindred for me is ESTP, which is my wife, but that's also at the very bottom of the 8, very, very bottom. And then there's ENFJ above that one. That's at the level 7. And then there's ESFP is at the is number 7, and then ENFJ is number 6. Then number 5 would be ENTJ, basically. So those bottom 4, again, just don't even bother initiating. So I'm going to give you these initiating strategies right now. I'm going to give you them for SE users and SI users, or SE users and NE users. I'll give you these initiating strategies. But these initiating strategies, you really shouldn't use them on the bottom 4 relationships. Stick with the top 4 because it's safe, okay? Now, obviously, you don't have to play it safe, and if you're willing to take the hits and take the damage with initiating with the bottom 4, go for it. And obviously, if you're an SI user, don't initiate with a fellow SI user. Automatically, they're just going to label you creepy because of your low SE anyway. Obviously, if you are an NI user, don't initiate with a fellow NI user because they're just going to automatically claim that you're taking their choice away or you're putting your choice above theirs. So don't even bother doing that. So really, only 4 of the 16 types are initiatable. You can only really safely initiate with 25% of the human population of the opposite sex if you're going for a sexual relationship. A heterosexual relationship, that is. But I mean, this still applies even amongst LGBTQT, all those things. It still applies. Directly applies. This still directly applies. You can only initiate with your top 4. So how do you do it? All right. So it really comes down, if you're an NI user going to an SI user, all you have to say, hey, I want to go to XYZ, or I want to go do this thing, you should come with me. It's because you're stating what you want to do with your NI, and then you're saying that they should accompany you with your SE. That's how you initiate with them. But you'll be safe to do it if they're in your top 4, and they'll feel flattered. It's all good. Now, if you're an SI user initiating with an NI user, it's a little bit different. It's more like, hey, I did this thing and I'm thinking about doing it again. Do you want to come with me? You're giving them the choice. You're giving the NI optimistic, for me, if it's me doing it, I'm giving the NI optimistic a choice. Here's an example. Like if I'm at a grocery store and I see an ISTP who is a cashier at a grocery store, and I'm interested in her. I could safely initiate with her, and I get in her line, and yeah, it's a little bit longer because everyone wants to be in her line because she's smoking hot. So okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So everyone's in her line, and even though there's someone else's line that has room or whatever, but I stay in the line, and she gets my groceries together, do the entire transaction, and then I'm like I'll talk about do a how to win friends and influence people routine of some kind, which is Dale Carnegie, which I highly recommend that book. That book is the most important book I ever read in my life, and the second most important book is 50th Law. But yeah, it's really helpful for someone who has TI parent and SE demon, trust me. But then I get to talking to her and talk about her name or talk about something, whatever, and of course there's customers behind me and there's pressure mounting. I don't care, but then because SE demon. But then I'd be to her, I'd say hey, if you wanted to ask me out, I might say yes. Because I'm basically saying I'm giving her the choice. I'm giving you the choice to ask me out. I'm giving you, NI optimistic, the choice, right? That's how an SI user initiates with somebody, right? And given that, she would be in the top 4, it would be okay with a pickup line or an opener like that. Pickup lines are a thing, folks. They're things. Openers are a thing. Cold approach pickup is a thing. But it's really a thing when it's optimized in this whole situation where it's hey, you want to be, you want to be targeting your top 4. You definitely want to be targeting your top 4 relationships: affection, companion, natural, and intrigue. You want to target those, okay? and then you use these openers with them. Yeah, it's like, so the SI user, you say, I did this thing, do you want to come with me when I do it again? Or you say, I really like ice cream. Do you want to go to Cold Stone with me? Okay, that's another SI inferior, or SI, SI, like, it's an SI opener. Basically, that's all it is. It's just an SI opener. I had this good experience. You want to come with me? That kind of thing. Or, hey, do you want to do this thing with me? I did it once and it was pretty awesome. That's another way of doing it. Okay, that's how an introverted sensor does a pickup line process for asking out a member of the opposite sex. And it's different when it's the NI user doing it. The NI user is just stating what they want and being like saying, you should. You're not even giving the SI user a choice, and they don't want to be given a choice. They're like, hey, you should come with me. Hey, let's have this shared experience together. Where the NI user is saying, I want ice cream, or I want to go to Cold Stone, or I'm going to Cold Stone right now. You should come with me. That's how it is. Those are the basics, building blocks of everything you need to do cold approach pickup right there. That's it. It's slightly easier for women to do, but really hard for masculine women to do. It's pretty tough for men to do in general, but exceptionally hard for feminine men like myself to actually do that. Feminine men being like, for example, crusader men, which are colloquially considered because of how beta they are by default in their masculine idealism, and how self-sacrificing they are as men by default because they're crusader men, and their FE self-deprecation. As a result of that, they have it the hardest and get the short end of the stick. Yay! So that's why they have to end up investing themselves so much effort, basically over time, so that they can make themselves even more desirable, right? That's literally how that works. So, and these openers are not just used, they're not just pickup lines. They could be used for anything. They could be used for friendship. They could be used for acquaintances. They could be used for any person. It doesn't matter. Any person. It could be your father. It could be your mother. It doesn't matter. It could be grandmother. I don't know. They all apply. Just the thing is that you have to really understand what you're doing when it comes to people's functions. You have to type them super quick and then follow through according to what you're going to do. Now, if you're still interested in someone you're bottom for, don't even bother initiating. Don't even bother initiating. Either slowly feed their SE optimistic or slowly feed their NE optimistic over time, and you'll be fine. Slowly feed their optimistic functions over time, their extroverted optimistic functions over time, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But just remember that it carries the risk of, someone settling for the other. And if you really want that as a foundation of your relationship, you might want to, be concerned about that. That's definitely a thing. All right. Questions. Does anyone in the audience have any questions in relation to what we're talking about in this particular lecture? Now would be the time to ask questions. And let me see if there's already questions in the chats. I'm going to be going through that right here. Okay, companion is the pedagogue. Yes, it is. The companion relationship is the pedagogue. Andres asks, would it be NI pessimistic women who claim NE optimistic men are controlling assholes for making them jump through hoops? Yes. Yes, it would, Andres. Absolutely, it would. That is a great question. Thank you for asking. Yes, they are complaining about having to jump through hoops. My wife still, to this day, has a problem with me expecting her to jump through hoops. She does not like doing it. She'll never want to do it. NI inferior just can't do it. But welcome to any hero. And by the way, I'm the man, which means you orbit me, honey, not the other way around. So you're going to have to jump through some hoops. Hashtag, it's what you signed up for. So just to give you guys an idea, like, there's a lot of risks here, and just these little basic issues are ultimately what ends up causing a lot of problems in relationships or friendships over time. And it's really the stuff that can end up making people grow apart. Now, that being said, obviously we're not talking about camaraderie right now. We're only talking about compatibility. In a camaraderie situation, it's different, because then in camaraderie, people are getting paid, or maybe there's formal training. It's about education. It's not about having fun. It's not about getting close to people. It's not about having a brotherhood. It's not about having the bromance. It's not about having the mature feminine, the mature masculine. It's not about those things per se. Camaraderie is more of like, just trying to get work done. It's very task oriented. There's a specific goal, etc. Whereas, with compatibility, it's more sexually charged, and ultimately like for everyone's mutual benefit to a point. So, but you can literally see just how in your life, if you organize people based on compatibility and camaraderie related relationships, you can literally see who the people are, who's settling for who. It's funny. It's really funny. You can actually literally identify it. Okay, Yasmin asks, can an NI optimistic user automatically reject someone regardless of interest due to NE nemesis? I mean, yeah, if they're hurt. But the thing is, though, is that if the introverted sensor is already behaving comfortable around the anti-optimistic, then the extrovert intuition won't have a problem. It doesn't need to come out because the extroverted sensing is happy with the other person being comfortable anyway. You see what I'm saying? Because then the NE is like, oh, there's no risk here because they're already comfortable. So it's not a problem. Robert Potts says, if you wanted to say X, I'd say yes. Also conveys, I won't reject you. Exactly. And SE pessimistic is really not down for being rejected, and this is in the parent or the parent or the inferior. It's just the inferior is way more sensitive to it than the parent is, but the parent eventually will just lose their mind over time. So, all right. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions from the chat. Thank you all for watching this episode of the Cutting Edge Podcast with C.S. Joseph, April 2022. I hope that you folks enjoyed this lecture, and it helped kind of explain relationship dynamics in terms of initiating versus responding when it comes to functions, and understanding, the risk of people settling for other people, etc. Hopefully it gave you all, or opened your eyes to the dynamics as well relating to cold approach pickup and how that actually works. So more on this topic later. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching. And oh, you have a question above, huh? Let's see. Okay, so visual typing wise, what's the difference between SE pessimism versus SE optimism? That's too much for me to answer now. I really can't. For me, it's like a feeling, and trying to explain an intuitive feeling or gut instinct on that is like really hard. But I could see SE optimistic pretty easily. It's SE pessimism that I don't really see very well. So it's mostly just looking for what's missing using logic, and that will kind of help you out, Andres. So, so hopefully that answered your question. So, all right, cool. That's it for this evening, folks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next month on the Cutting Edge Podcast. Later.